Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Mari. I'm one of the librarians at Portland Public Library in Portland, Maine, and I'm here today to continue reading The Dragon Thief by Zetta Elliott, illustrated by Geneva B, and published by Random House. We're going to pick up with Chapter 6, which is where the boy who bullies Jackson and Vikram is charging down on them, Kenny O'Connor. Chapter 6. Kenny O'Connor is huge. He doesn't say much in class, but then he doesn't have to. Everyone stays out of his way. Rumor has it that he got left back not once, but twice. That would explain why he's a foot taller than the rest of us and twice as wide. Vic and I see Kenny on the bus sometimes, though most days his mom drops him off at school. We've never really spoken before, but now Kenny nods at us as if we're pals. When he flicks his shaggy brown hair aside, I see that his blue eyes are fixed on the red mint tin. I quickly shove it in my pocket and glance nervously at Vic. Hey, Kenny, Vic stammers. What's up? Kenny shrugs and jams his giant fists into the bottom pockets of his vest. It's the kind that fishermen wear, and it could probably fit an adult. That's how big Kenny is. Not much, he says finally. I hear the curiosity in his voice. Why would a kid like Kenny O'Connor take an interest in my tin? Vic looks at me and I try to think of something else to say, something that will make Kenny go away. I get up from the stoop and carefully step around Kenny. We were just heading to the library. We're working on a project. Vic nods eagerly and jumps to stand beside me. We could make a run for it if we had to. Kenny's big, but I don't think he's that fast. Kenny frowns. For school? I nod, but Vikram shakes his head at the same time. One of Kenny's eyebrows go up. Now he's suspicious. What's in the little red box? He asked. What box? Vic asks innocently. Kenny puts his hands out of his pocket and folds his arm across his broad chest. I saw you two fighting over it. What's inside? Nothing important, I say. It's just an old mint tin. I pull the tin from my pocket and I shake it. See? Empty. Kenny's eyes shift from my face to Vic's. He unfolds his thick arms and holds his hand. Give it here. I can get that lid off. That's okay. You probably have more important things to do. I nudge Vic so that he knows to follow me as I start heading up the block. But I was wrong. Kenny is big and fast. With 2 giant steps, he gets in front of us again and blocks the sidewalk. My stomach knots with dread when Kenny says, "Give it to me." It doesn't sound like a demand, but I don't think that Kenny's used to hearing the word no. I clutch the tin in my hand and try to think of a reason to refuse. It's okay. No thanks. Kenny reaches out and snatches the tin from my hand. He shakes it, holding it close to his ear. If there's nothing inside, why is it so hot? Vic pipes up. That's part of the experiment. Right, I cry. It's trapped gas. Both Kenny and Vic look grossed out. I try to recover some of my cool. We're just going to go buy a new tin of mints. I like mints. You too, right, Vic? Sure, he replies with a wink. Let's go to the store right now and get some more. Kenny stares at us like we're the most pathetic people he ever met. Then he surprises us again by saying, I have a special spray at home. It helps you open lids that are stuck on jars. When Vic and I don't respond, Kenny turns and starts walking away, with the tin in his hand. Come on, he says over his shoulder. My house is this way. I'm trying not to panic, but this is bad. Really bad. I tug Vic's arm, but he just sighs and shrugs helplessly. Kenny's bigger than both of us. Even if we both jumped on him at the same time, we probably couldn't get the mint tin out of his hand. And we'd probably both end up getting clobbered. Vic trails after Kenny and I hurry to catch up. We cross the busy avenue and head down the quiet block, lined with gray stone row houses. Kenny stops at one with a gas lamp flickering on the bottom of the stoop. He waves us up and unlocks the front door at the top of the stairs. Kenny drops his house key into one of the pockets on his vest and says, My mom can be a bit weird. Just ignore her. That's what I do. Vic and I exchange nervous glances. Kenny seems to sense our unease because he reaches past us to lock the vestibule door. Don't worry, he says with a forced laugh. We'll go out back. That's where my workshop is. We head down a long, dark hallway that ends in a bright kitchen. Kenny's mother is perched on a stool studying a cookbook. Hi, honey, she says absently, barely glancing up. How's your walk? Fine, Kenny says. Then he coughs, so that his mother looks up from her book. When she sees me and Vic, her whole face lights up. She flings the book onto the counter and slides off the stool. "Oh, you've brought friends home! How wonderful!" Mrs. O'Connor rushes over to shake our hands. "You're so welcome, boys. Call me Joe. Can I get you anything? Are you hungry?" Kenny glares at us so that we know what answer to give his mother. "Can't talk now, Mom. We have a science project to work on." "A science project? How exciting. Are you sure you wouldn't like a snack? I picked up some superfoods at the health food store so I can make those granola bites you like so much. You boys will need brain fuel to help you focus. Or how about a smoothie? I got some kale at the farmer's market yesterday." "No time, Mom. We'll be out back." Kenny pushes past his mother, opens a sliding glass door at the back of the kitchen, and steps out onto a wooden deck. Vic and I follow Kenny outside, stopping to say, "It was nice to meet you, Mrs. O'Connor." "Just call me Joe," she says with a warm smile. "I'll fix a tray and bring it out in a few moments. Would that be all right, Kennedy?" Kenny just gives his mom a dismissive backwards wave as he disappears down the deck stairs. We follow him across a tidy lawn to a small wooden shed in the far corner of the yard. When we're inside, he closes the door and slides a bolt lock in place. "No one will bother us here. Sorry about my mom. She's freaking out because she thinks that I don't have any friends." I don't blame her. At school, Kenny is a loner. I figure he doesn't need me to remind him of that fact, but Vic blurts, "Well, do you?" Kenny scowls and shrugs at the same time. Then, softly, he says, "Maybelline was my friend." "Who's Maybelline?" Vic asks. Kenny points to a photograph held by magnets to the door of a metal storage cabinet. "Maybelline's my nanny." "Well, not anymore. My mom takes care of me now." Vic and I exchange glances more carefully this time, but Kenny can't see us because his eyes are on the photo of Maybelline. She's an older black woman with a warm smile and a gap between her two front teeth. To our surprise, Kenny continues in a mournful voice. "Maybelline was the best. She was like my first real friend." We don't know what to say, but when Kenny suddenly scans our faces for signs of mockery, we nod sympathetically. "My papa had an ayah. That's what we call nannies in India," Vic says. "She still lives with us. Auntie's like 100 years old." Kenny's eyes open wide. Maybelline wasn't quite that old. She said that when it comes to friends, it's quality, not quantity, that matters. "A lot of kids at our school are jerks. I don't really care if they don't want to be friends with me." Vic was feeling brave because he said, "They're probably just afraid of you, Kenny. You're kind of intimidating, you know." "No, I'm not," Kenny says. I wish there was a mirror in his workshop so Kenny could see himself the way that we see him. "Actually, Kenny, you are a little scary. I mean, it's just because you're so, well..." "I'm not that," Kenny cries, his freckled cheeks flushing red. I jump back and stammer, I know. I wasn't gonna say... I was trying to say..." "What?" Kenny snarls. Vic shifts his feet so he's standing closer to me. Kenny could pound us both back with one blow, but it helps to know that Vic's got my back. Vic clears his throat and says, "Face it, Kenny, you're massive." Kenny glares at us, unsure whether to be offended by Vic's choice of word. "Massive as in really strong," I add. Vic nods. "Yeah, you're powerful." I'm not sure if Kenny believes us, but some of the anger goes out of his eyes. "I'm not a bully," he says sullenly. "It's those other kids who pick on me." I've never seen anybody picking on Kenny O'Connor. No one at our school is brave enough or stupid enough to do that. "Why would anyone pick on you?" Vic asks. Kenny shrugs and looks back at the photo of Maybelline on the cabinet. There's another photo of a man with two boys. Looks like they're camping near a river. The man's face has been scribbled over with a pen. He's wearing the same vest that Kenny's got on now. "School is hard for me," Kenny says quietly. "Reading is, at least. The words get all mixed up." "Maybe you're dyslexic," Vic says. "So what if I am?" Kenny barks. Vic holds up his hand like he's ready to surrender. "It's not such a big deal. My cousin has dyslexia, so reading is hard for him, but he just takes it slow. And he's really good at math. Somehow numbers don't move around as much as letters. For him, anyway." Kenny sinks into a folding chair and seems to relax. "For a while I went to this school that had special services for kids like me." "So how did you end up at our school?" I ask. "I got suspended." "What'd you do?" Vic asks. Kenny tries to stifle a smile, and I threw a desk at the wall. "And you wonder why you don't have any friends." For a second or two, there's an awkward silence in the shed, and then all three of us burst out laughing. Kenny opens a drawer under the table and pulls out a rag. "Here, hold this," he says without looking at either of us. I take the soft, clean rag from him and glance at Vic. Kenny's not so bad after all. But what will he do when the tin finally opens and a magic butterfly tumbles out? Kenny pulls a key out of his pocket and unlocks a small golden padlock. He slides a chain that's wrapped around the handles of the metal cabinet, which takes quite a bit of the shed. "This used to be my dad's," Kenny explains. "Now I keep all my stuff in here." He reaches up to the top shelf of the cabinet and takes down a spray bottle. "My mom bought this a while ago. When my dad left, she used to sit on the couch in her bathrobe watching TV all day. She'd watch lots of infomercials and order just about everything. Most of the stuff was garbage, but this spray really works." "Listen," Kenny Vic says, "we've got to come clean. This isn't part of a science project." A smug grin spreads across Kenny's face. "I know," he says simply. "I just told Mom that so she'd leave us alone. I know that you two were up to something as soon as I saw you sitting on that stoop." Vic looks at me and nods as if to say, "Your turn." I take a deep breath. We have no choice but to tell Kenny everything. "Do you believe in magic?" I ask tentatively. Kenny looks at me, then Vic, then down at the tin in his hand. He thinks a moment before saying, "I guess." Suddenly there's a knock at the door. Vic and I jump as the doorknob rattles, but Kenny raises a finger to his lips. "Kennedy, I brought you and your friend some snacks. Are you in there?" "Of course you are. You must be hard at work. I'll just leave this tray out here, outside the door, and you can get it whenever you're ready. Okay? I'm going to go back in the house now, but you can text me if you need anything." We hear Mrs. O'Connor sit down the tray. Her footsteps make no sound as they cross the lawn, but we can hear her climbing the deck stairs. Only then does Kenny slide open the bolt on the door. He nods at Vic and says, "I'll open the door and you grab the tray." Vic nods back and does as he told, pausing to wave at Kenny's mother, who is still standing on the deck. Kennedy closes the door and inspects the contents of the tray once Vic sets it on the table. There are 3 tumblers filled with a thick green sludge, a bowl of mixed berries, and a plate covered in square cookies made with a whole lot of seeds. "It's not as bad as it could be," Kenny says, "but my mother's snack always need a little improving." Kenny opens the cabinet, and this time we see an entire shelf filled with junk food. He takes down a jar of chocolate hazelnut spread and a bottle of butterscotch syrup. "Help yourself," he says before dipping one of the seed cookies into the chocolate spread. Vic does the same and nods appreciatively. "Not bad," he declares with a full mouth. I pick up one of the tumblers and take a sip. "Ugh, yeah," Kenny says. "There's no real way to improve the kale. Do you want a soda?" I look at the bottled beverages Kenny has lined up inside his cabinet. "Water, please." He hands me a bottle and I thank him before taking a few swigs. Then I take a deep breath and bring us back to the matter at hand. "Here's the deal, Kenny. A few days ago, I went to another world, the realm of magic." Kenny pauses to lick the chocolate off his lips. "How did you get there?" he asked. "I took a transporter, but I wasn't alone. I was making an important delivery, but when I got there, something was missing. Stolen by my bratty little sister," Vic says bitterly. "So the people I was working for sent me back to this world, and they sent someone along to help me find out when I was lost." Kenny nods as if all that makes sense. Then he says, "What did you lose?" I swallow hard and say, "A baby dragon." Kenny doesn't even blink. He just gently taps his finger on the mint tin. "And what's in here?" "A magic butterfly," I say. Kenny's unblinking gaze shifts from me to Vic and then back to me. "For real?" "For real. We're on a mission, but you don't have to get involved, Kenny. Just don't tell anyone about what's inside that tin, please." "Who would I tell?" Kenny says with a half grin. "I don't have any friends." He wipes his hands on his pants and gives the tin a few squirts before setting the bottle down. "Ready?" he asks. "Ready," Vic answers for both of us. Kenny uses the rag to get a grip on the oily tin. Through a combination of pulling and twisting, he does manage to loosen the lid. We watch breathlessly as Kenny sets the tin down on the table and gives the lid one final tug. With a loud popping sound, the lid comes off and our mouths fall open in shock. There's no butterfly inside the tin. There's a tiny red person. It yawns and stretches its limb before climbing out of the tin and onto the table. You can see Jackson and Kenny and Vic and that little person. Is it An elf? Vic asks. I can't reply because I don't know the answer to that question. It was a butterfly, not an elf, that lit up the darkness of the transporter when Ma and I returned from the realm of magic. This creature is as new to me as it is to Vic and Kenny. When the creature is certain that it has our attention, it leans forward and makes a strange noise, like a long, loud sneeze. Something pops out of its back, and we watch in amazement as two shimmering wings slowly unfurl. The wings beat slowly 2 or 3 times before flapping so fast the creature lifts into the air like a hummingbird. Whoa, Kenny whispers. The awe in his voice makes me think that he just might keep his promise. That's incredible. It's so beautiful. The creature turns towards Kenny and lets its bright yellow eyes slowly sweep over him. Kenny blushes and looks away. The creature nods at him as if it approves before turning to Vic and me. I wonder if it will remember me, but the look of disdain on the creature's face assures me that it has not forgotten what I've done. She's a fairy, Vic cries. How do you know it's a girl? I ask. Vic rolls his eyes. All fairies are girls. He thinks a moment and adds, aren't they? We take a closer look at the flying creature. All I can tell from watching the fairy is that it seems kind of vain. Kenny makes no effort to hide his admiration. Are you hungry? He asks the fairy. Without waiting for a response, Kenny takes a chocolate bar out of the cabinet. He snaps the square off and offers it to the fairy. It leans forward, sniffs it, and then takes a tiny bite. The creature's eyes close as it savors the sweet treat, but then it wanders over to the tray to examine the other options. The fairy picks up a blueberry and eats it the way that we would eat an apple. Then it flies up to the rim of my glass. To our surprise, the fairy bends down and uses its hand to ladle the kale smoothie into its mouth. Gross. I think she likes it, Vic says. Kenny rummages through a table drawer until he finds a red cocktail straw. Here, use this, he says to the fairy. It would take forever for me to suck anything through such a narrow straw, but the fairy plunges the red straw into the smoothie and starts drinking. We all watch in silence as the tiny creature drains the whole tumbler of its slimy green fluid in less than a minute. After loudly sucking up the last of the smoothie, the fairy flits back to the table and belches loudly. Kenny laughs and says, You're awesome. Then he turns to me, his face glowing with excitement. Can't believe you have a fairy, a real live fairy. What's its name? Vic turns to me as well, but all I can do is shrug. I don't know. The butterfly belonged to Sis, not me. You don't have a sister, Vic reminds me, before mumbling, lucky you. It's like how it is with Ma, I explain. She isn't anybody's mother, but that's what everyone calls her. Sis is... I think back to that moment in the orange tent when Sis breathed fire into her palm. I knew as soon as we met that Sis didn't like me, even before she found out that I lost one of her precious dragons. Just the memory of her scowl sends a shiver down my spine. Sis is like a dragon lady. The fairy doesn't seem to appreciate that comparison because it scowls before hurling a blueberry at me. I duck and say, I like dragons. I'm just not very good at keeping track of them. So what should we call the fairy? Kenny asks. Then he leans down and politely asks, do you have a name? The tiny red creature nods before flying over to the open cabinet. It points at a jar of grape jelly, and then it scans the shelves and finds a bottle of glass cleaner. It points to a third product before looking at us expectantly. When we clearly don't understand, the fairy points to each of them again. It's spelling out its name. J-E-F. Jeff? That can't be right, I say. Can it? Kenny frowns. What's wrong with Jeff? That's a boy's name, I say. No, it isn't, Kenny barks. And what if it is? He says in the same breath. If the fairy says his name is Jeff, then that's what we're going to call him. Kenny stops yelling when he realizes Vic and I are pressed against the wall of the shed. We can't get further away from him unless we open the door and run, and we can't leave the shed without the fairy. The fairy Jeff doesn't look like he's going anywhere without Kenny. Jeff is perched on Kenny's left shoulder, smiling smugly at Kenny like he's his new best friend and bodyguard. What do you need Jeff to do? Kenny asks once he's had a moment to calm down. I don't know what the fairy can do, I tell him. I hope that he could help me get in touch with my grandfather. Kenny turns his head and asks Jeff, can you do that? Chapter 7, Kavita. Auntie and I look around the streets of Jackson Heights. We never had lunch, she said. Are you hungry? I nod and I look up the block. There are lots of restaurants to choose from. Should we go to Manju Masi's place? Auntie clicks her tongue. Then we have to eat her food, and I'm sure your mommy has called everyone in the family to tell them that I kidnapped you. We better eat here instead. Auntie puts her hand on my shoulder and steers me across the street and into a crowded shop with a red awning. We squeeze past the customers waiting at the counter to buy sweets. I follow her to the back of the shop where there are tables for dining. Most of them are empty, so we sit at a table for 4 next to the wall, even though there are just 2 of us. Well, 3 if you include Mo. I think the dragon can still smell the sweets we pass, because when I lift the shawl, I find Mo anxiously pacing the cage. When the dragon starts to whine, I drop the shawl and I ask Auntie if we should get Mo something to eat. On our way out, best not to draw attention to your little friend, I think. I nod and Auntie waves a waiter over to our table. Dal makhani, kadeh paneer, and 2 samosas, please. And 2 chai as well. When the waiter brings over our chai in white cups and saucers, Auntie immediately reaches for the sugar dispenser. She holds the glass jar upside down, and a steady stream of cane sugar pours into her chai. Finally, I ask, "Can I have some sugar, Auntie?" She looks at me surprised. Then Auntie smiles and hands the dispenser to me and starts stirring her chai. I don't put quite as much sugar in my cup, but I like my chai sweet too. I take a sip of the milky spiced tea and ask, "Do you think Beijon is right, Auntie?" Auntie takes a sip of her sugary chai and sighs with her eyes closed. "Just right," she says, before taking another sip. I wonder if Auntie has forgotten my question, but then she looks at me and says, "I've never known Beijon to misread the stars." I sip my chai and try to decide whether to ask my next question. Auntie isn't looking at me, but she knows that something's on my mind. "Say what you have to say, child." I set my cup on its saucer and wait for Auntie to look at me. "Why did Beijon say that you were going on a journey?" Auntie lowers her eyes and stirs her chai for a while. "We all have a purpose, child. I've spent a long time wondering what mine is. Now, thanks to your little friend, I think I know." Before I can ask a follow-up, the waiter arrives with our food. Auntie hands me the plate with my samosa, and suddenly I forget all about the purpose and journeys and dig into our delicious meal. When we finish eating, Auntie pays the bell and leads me over to the counter where the sweets are kept. Even though my belly is full, my mouth starts to water as I gaze at all of the creamy treats behind the glass. Mo must sense that the sweets are near because the dragon starts scampering around the cage. I hurry outside, leaving Auntie to make her purchase. She joins us a moment later, a small red box poking out of her purse. "What do we do now?" I ask. "Now we find a taxi," Auntie replies. It's always so loud in the city, so when we hear a blaring car horn, we don't think anything of it. But then I hear someone calling my name, and I see Manju Masi on the other side of the intersection. She isn't talking at us. There's a car beside her. Manju Masi is blocking traffic by standing outside her car, frantically waving at us. She has her phone pressed to her ear. I can't hear her, but I know what she's telling Mommy. "I found them." Auntie grabs a hold of my shoulder and steers me towards the entrance of the subway. "Quick, down here." There are so many people coming up the stairs that going down with a bird cage in my arms is pretty challenging, but Auntie has a firm grip on my shoulder and she uses me as sort of a shield. Some people show respect for her age and veer out of the way. I can still hear Manju Masi calling our names on the street above. Auntie rushes us over to the agent booth and buys a single ride Metro card. I hand the cage to Auntie, scramble under the turnstile, and then take back the cage so that Auntie can swipe her card, pass through as well. We weave our way through the press of people coming and going, and finally squeeze onto the train, just as the familiar ding-dong sound signals the closing of the doors. "Good heavens," Auntie says, fanning herself with Beijon's flyer. A young man with giant headphones clamped over his ears gets up and offers Auntie a seat. She thanks him and sinks onto the bench. I rest the cage on Auntie's knees and look up at the map of the wall of the train. "We'll have to switch trains to get back to Brooklyn," I tell Auntie. A taxi would have been easier, Auntie says, but we must do the best we can with what we have. Another passenger gets up and I squeeze onto the bench next to Auntie. "I like taking the train," I tell her. "I think your little friend finds the subway a bit cramped." I looked at the car we're on. It isn't rush hour yet, so the train isn't packed. But then I lift the shawl to check on Mo and I gasp before dropping the cloth again. Mo is growing. No wonder the cave felt so much heavier. We haven't even given Mo anything to eat yet. Must be the mint that Mo found under Beijan's desk. So what do we do? I ask, unable to hide the alarm I feel. Auntie looks at her watch. This will take us close. Auntie looks at her watch. It will take us close to an hour to reach Brooklyn by train. Mo whines pitifully as its body presses against the bar of the cage. Auntie and I move to the far end of the car where there are fewer people. Auntie sings a lullaby that seems to soothe the unhappy dragon. When it's time to switch trains, Auntie and I wait on the platform till all the other passengers head towards the exit. Then Auntie lifts the shawl while I open the door and try to squeeze Mo out of the cage. I have to bend the metal bars, but eventually the dragon squeezes out. Auntie quickly drapes the shawl over Mo, and I scoop the growing dragon in my arms. When Mo licks my face, I smell mint on the dragon's breath. Oh, Mo, I say. Caring for a baby dragon is more difficult than I thought it would be. Keep its head covered, Auntie advises. Hopefully people will think that it's just a toy. We head for the train that will take us back to Brooklyn. When we finally arrive, Auntie and I climb the stairs and exit the station. I want to take the elevator, but Auntie says we need to avoid getting close to other people. Where are we going? I ask, breathing heavily. Our home is a few blocks away, but Auntie is walking in the opposite direction. You can see here. There's the cage. You can see little Mo. Beijan said the gate was housed in a tall structure, Auntie reminds me. A tower, I say softly, thinking of many churches in our neighborhood. One is a bell tower. I hear the bells chiming every hour. Could the gate to the realm of the magic be in a church? This way, Auntie says. Well, we're standing in the corner waiting for the light to change. I see a stroller abandoned next to the overflowing trash can. Suddenly, I have an idea. I ask Auntie to hold Mo for a moment. Then I brush the crumbs and candy wrappers off the seat and test out the stroller's wheel. One of the front wheels wobbles so badly that it's hard to make the stroller move in a straight line. I guess that's why it's being thrown away. I sigh and I hold my arms out to Auntie so that she can give the dragon back to me. It's not perfect, I tell Mo, but it will have to do. You're getting too heavy for me to carry. When we get across the street, a man comes up to us. He's wearing a baseball cap and mirrored sunglasses and has the collar of his denim jacket turned up. Without saying a word to me or Auntie, he squats in front of the stroller and grins at Mo. What a beautiful baby, the man says. Then he tilts his head up at me and my mouth falls open. Every inch of this man's face is covered in tattoos, and they're moving. You shouldn't walk around with something so precious, he tells me. Anything could happen. Auntie keeps a tight grip on my shoulder. We can manage, thank you. Now, if you don't mind, we have a rather urgent appointment. Indeed you do, which is why you should have an escort, the man insists. Allow me, he says, taking the handles of the stroller. The gate you're looking for is this way. Auntie doesn't say a word, but I gasp. How could this strange man know about that? He looks back over his shoulder and smiles at us. Coming? Auntie grabs a hold of my hand and gives it a squeeze. Then we follow the tattooed man up Franklin Avenue. Chapter 8. Jackson. Jeff smiles at Kenny and flies over the table. He kicks at the tray until Vic moves it out of the way. Once he has enough room, Jeff hovers a few inches above the table and closes his eyes. Jeff holds up his arms like a ballet dancer and then lowers them slowly as his wings beat faster. What is he doing? Vic asks me. I don't know, I whisper, but it looks like Jeff's concentrating real hard. Shh! Kenny hisses at us. Jeff raises his arms once more, but this time when he lowers them, a circle of blue light appears. It's as if the fairy traced a bubble in the air and then willed it into existence. I don't have time to be astonished because suddenly I hear a man's voice. Is this thing working? Can you hear me? I peer into the blue bubble and I see Alroy's face looking at me. His head is huge and his body is small, the way that people look through the peephole in our front door. Elroy, I cry with relief. Is my granddad there? I need his help. Jackson, have you found the dragon? Elroy looks over his shoulder and nervously adds, Please tell me you got it back. Not yet, but we know where it is. Pretty much. Listen, Elroy, I need your help. Ma's sick. She went to bed as soon as we got back from the realm of magic, and she hasn't got up since. It's like all her energies is gone. Elroy shakes his head. I was afraid that might have happened. The dragons you left here aren't doing well either. Sis is tending to them now. She's awfully angry, Jax. If you can't get that dragon back here soon, Sis will come and get it herself. And you definitely don't want that. He's right. I don't. But I have to make him understand what I'm up against. Ambrose is gone, and the transporters aren't working. Once I find the dragon, how do I get it back to the realm of magic? I wish I could help you, son, but we're having the same problem over here. In fact, your granddad's out there now, searching for a way to get back to you. Why is all this happening? I ask helplessly, fighting to hold back tears. Vic gives my shoulder a squeeze and reminds me to take a deep breath. Elroy sighs heavily and takes off his spectacles. He rubs his eyes. I blame myself for this mess. I was so sure those dragons would fix the imbalance that's been building over the years. But I was wrong, Elroy confesses. It's too late, and now you and Ma are mixed up in my mistake. I take another deep breath. We can still make things right. Just tell me what to do, Elroy. Elroy shakes his head as he puts his glasses back on. You're just a kid. Ma never even had a chance to begin your training. Hearing the defeat in Elroy's voice makes me realize that I'm not ready to give up. There's got to be something I can do, I insist. There are all those books in Ma's apartment. Tell me which one to read. What you need isn't in a book, Jax. There's only one person who could get you back into the realm of magic. Trub? I ask hopefully. Elroy shakes his head and clears his throat. He glances over his shoulder once more before leaning in close. His head seems to swell up like a balloon, and I fight the urge to laugh. There's a gatekeeper. He was demoted a few years back, but he might know of a gap between the two worlds. That's great, I cry. Where can I find them? To my surprise, Elroy laughs. Blue has a sweet tooth. If he's got any teeth left, he'll be sinking them into something sugary. I wait for Elroy to go on, but after a few seconds, it's clear that he said all he had to say. That's it? That doesn't really tell me where to find this Blue person. Sorry, Jax. Blue's been off my radar for some time. He's unreliable and unpredictable. Last time I saw Blue, he was scarfing down donuts. I jump when Kenny suddenly joins in the conversation. I'd forgot that he and Vic were in the shed too. That doesn't help, Ken complains. There are hundreds of donut shops in New York, Vic adds, and a ton of food trucks sell donuts too. Elroy frowns. Who's that, Jax? You're not alone? I'm with my friends. They're here to help me, I assure him. Magic is serious business, Jack. You can't tell ordinary people what's going on. They won't understand. And wasn't it your friend who sold the dragon? That was my sister, not me, Vic blurts out. It's okay, Elroy. I trust them. And until you and Trub get here, I need a crew of my own. Well, Elroy thinks for a moment before giving me a grudging nod. Be careful. If you do find Blue, he'll know you're desperate. He wants to strike a bargain, but just remember that he's... Just then the cherry drops to the table and collapses into a tiny heap. The blue bubble disappears, and so does Elroy. You wore Jeff out, Kenny says, gently scooping the exhausted creature up in his hand. Should we put him back in the tin? I nod, but Kenny glares at us. Would you want to be crammed into that tiny tin? No, I admit, but we can't walk around Brooklyn with a fairy. Kenny looks at his vest and said, Jeff could ride along with me. He carefully deposits the fairy in one of his pockets, then puts his hands on his hips. So how do we find Blue? I glance at Vic, who looks just as surprised at me. You don't have to come with us, Kenny. Kenny's mouth falls open and his cheeks turn pink. He looks surprised and disappointed. But I helped you open the tin, and you told that Elroy guy that we were part of your crew. He is good with Jeff, Vic reminds me. Kenny nods in agreement. I can help in other ways, too. I know my way around the neighborhood, and, well, like you guys said before, I'm massive. I think about that for a moment. Having a friend Kenny's size might come in handy, but if anything happened to him, it'd be my fault. I don't know, Kenny, what if... Kenny doesn't give me a chance to finish. There's a donut shop on Empire Boulevard near the park. We could start there. There's one on Bedford Avenue, too. We could check both places, Vic suggests. I have a better idea, I say, but I'm gonna need your help, and things might get a little messy. Kenny shrugs. That doesn't bother me. I like getting my hands dirty. I'm going to remind you of that later, I warn him. Then I slide the bolt and open the shed door. Let's get going. We have a rat to find. And that is the end of Chapter 8, and that is where we're going to stop now. We're going to pick up tomorrow with Chapter 9, which starts with Jackson. Thank you for listening today. Once again, we are reading The Dragon Thief, written by Zetta Elliott, illustrated by Geneva B, and published by Random House. My name is Sarah Mari. I'm one of the librarians at Portland Public Library in Portland, Maine. Thank you for listening today, and I hope to see you tomorrow. Bye!